over the years, people learned
Honey,
to call her
they're gonna eat sugar
or
anyway.
Katie.
You know they are.
She loved to sew. She made all of my clothes that weren't hand-me-down from my cousin that lived in the city. I lived in the country on a farm. And the cousin that lived in the city was an only child. And she would get a new outfit for every occasion, and occasionally her closet would get so full that she couldn't get anything more in there, so her mother would pick out a lot of clothes and bring them out in the country to me. But everything that wasn't handed down to me, my mother made. And I used to love polka dots and ruffles, and one day at school I drew a picture of a dress that I wished my mom would make for me, and it was all ruffles. The skirt with one ruffle after the other, the collar was a ruffle, the sleeves were a ruffle, and she did make it for me, and she made it out of material that was a white background, and it had polka dots about that big round, green polka dots. Well, it cured my love of ruffles. I still like polka dots, but I don't wish for ruffles anymore. She loved to cook, and back then you better know how to make things from scratch, because you could go to the grocery and buy them. You had to grow them or put things together to make them, and she was very good at that. Let's see, what else? I think when I was very little, she and my father had a farm. I had never seen it. But then when I was 3 years old, they bought another farm. It was in Harford County. The first farm was in Baltimore County. This is all in the state of Maryland. And my very earliest memory is that we had a lot of company one day. I remember that it was my father's two brothers. One of them never married, but the other one married and had 2 daughters, and they were all at our house. And Mother arranged to eat out on the porch. She fixed the table out there. And our dining room had a door out onto that porch. Our house had a porch across the back, and all the way up one side and all the way across the front. The other side did not have a porch, but anyway, she came out that dining room door with a bowl of food to put on the table.
Daddy, can you open it?
And the porch had a rotten board, and her foot went through that rotten board, and she fell and broke her nose. And that's the earliest memory I have. She loved to bake hooked rugs, and she made them. Back then they didn't have nylon. People wore silk stockings or cotton stockings, for every day they'd wear cotton stockings, but for church or special occasions they wore silk stockings. And when they would get a run, she would cut the stockings, cut up the stockings round and round in about this wide a width. And she would take those and hook them into a rug. And she would use them in the kitchen. They were easy when they got dirty, just throw them in the wash. The wash was not in machines like today. You had a tub and a scrub board, and you heated your water and poured it into that tub along with some soap, and you scrubbed the clothes on that scrub board, wrung them out, put them over in another tub that had rinse water in it. So she had all this set up on the back porch. And the rugs, of course, would be the last thing you would wipe. You would wash white clothes and real light colored clothes, and then you would wash colored clothes, and then you would wash anything you had that was black or navy blue. When you got all that done, you could put the rugs in and wash them. And also on our back porch, she had an ice box, and this was just a great big box with the lid that raised up and a hole in the bottom at the back, and inside that big box there was a smaller box, and between the smaller box and the big box was sawdust. That was an insulator, and the iceman used to come around, and in the summertime, we didn't have any ice in the winter, but in the summer he'd come around and she'd buy either a 50-pound block or a 25-pound block, and it would go in the smaller box inside the big box. And that's where we kept anything that we wanted to keep cold. Sweet butter and milk, and we had a cow, and she would churn the cream. Not like down here in Tennessee. Here they let the milk go sour, and then they would make butter, and they'd pour water in on that cream, on that sour milk. And when you got done making your butter, you had a whole lot of buttermilk. And Granddaddy loved to drink buttermilk, and I used to think, how in the world can he drink buttermilk? Because my mother made butter from sweet cream, and there wouldn't have been a cup of buttermilk when she got done. She didn't pour water in there. So I had to learn a whole lot of different things when I came to Tennessee. But anyway, we're supposed to be talking about my mama, not me. In the fall, there was a big tree down close to the stream that had a fox grape vine on it. And we had a colored boy. Well, he was almost a man. He was a teenager. Anyway, he would help Mother, and we'd go down to that tree and gather those fox grapes, and she would make jelly out of those grapes. And we would gather blackberries, and she'd make jelly out of the blackberries. You'd pretty well used what the Lord provided. We had one field that was full of dewberries, and she would also make jelly out of the dewberries. She was very saving, and we had one field that after a storm, a lot of mushrooms would come up. And my father loved mushrooms, so she would go over to that field and gather all those mushrooms, and I would help her. And then she'd fix mushrooms for supper. I guess you would say that in addition to being able to sew, being a necessary thing, it was also her hobby. She was very proud of her sewing machine. She put it to real good use. I always thought it was neat how before she married, the only way she had to go anywhere, especially to church. If I ever get to take you to Maryland, I can show you the church, and I can show you where she lived, and she would have to drive her horse and buggy from down at what is now Loch Raven. They dammed up a river called, well, what was that river called? Big Gunpowder Falls. They dammed that up and made a big lake called Loch Raven. And the house that my mother grew up in was under the water. The house is no longer there, but you can see the spot of land where it was. And she'd drive her horse and buggy from there up to Chestnut Grove Church. And then later, my father also was a Presbyterian. And later on, when I was a little girl, about 8 or 10, I guess, they joined a different Presbyterian church. Of course, my father belonged to a different Presbyterian church when they got married. But then they joined one closer to our house. And I joined the church there when I was a little girl. It was called Falston Presbyterian Church. And we were very regular at the church. We went every Sunday, just like you do now. I had real straight hair, and I wanted curly hair. And Mother had this curling iron that she could lay on top of the wood cook stove. It was a big iron stove that burned wood, and she could lay that curling iron up on top of that stove and get it hot and curl my hair. And she'd do that every Sunday morning before Sunday school. This was before we joined the Presbyterian church, and we went to what is called just a plain Christian church, which was closest to us, and my father would take me to Sunday school. And by the time I got home, all that curl was gone out of my head. But she'd stand there and curl it for me, so I could go to church with a curly head.